welcome to In the News for February the 24th, 2023. I am Brett Broni from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Welcome back, Brett.
I am back. I am healthy. I know a little bit that some people may have known. I just had to go to the hospital last week for a fairly routine type of a procedure, but feeling better, back on my feet. And my only hope, one of the things I was thinking about last week, Jeff, is I was hoping that the good times were rolling for you, my friend.
We had a great
Mardi Gras in full swing.
We did. And it was a great, while you were unfortunately in the hospital, we were having a lot more fun in New Orleans. The weather started out a little iffy, but by Saturday of last week, it got to that perfect sort of cool weather. In fact, the problem, most people listen to this podcast as opposed to watching the video. And those that are just listening this week are definitely at an advantage, because if you're watching the video, you can see I'm still sort of sunburned. I don't know if wearing a red shirt makes it look better or worse. You know, the problem, it was the beautiful weather on Saturday, Brett.
Yes.
And so when you're outside and it's cool, you know, you see the sun out there, but your mind is, you know, idiot mistake. It's like, oh, well, I'm not going to get sunburned because it's so cool outside right now,
right.
Which of course is wrong. But we had so much fun, and it was beautiful weather all the way through Mardi Gras Day. It was really, really great. So
that's
an excellent Mardi Gras season in New Orleans.
You know, I'm looking at my background. Speaking of the video, it looks like it's Mardi Gras colors, which is this is actually from the iPhone background, right? What, last year, a couple years ago?
You got some purple, green, and gold in there.
Always like good stuff. Well, thank you as always for your posts every Friday morning, Jeff. This is one of the reasons that I've been looking forward to getting back into the podcast, In the News. And why don't we start up with something that is modern by talking about pictures from 2005. I love this. In fact, I've seen some people posting some of these comparisons of pictures that they took on maybe the original iPhone or an older iPhone compared with what those pictures might look like today. So this one that you linked to was from Harry McCracken, longtime tech journalist. And I just thought this was so fantastic. He says in his tweet, see if you can tell which photo is which. I think I was able to tell pretty quickly on here. These were from 2005 that he took with a Palm Treo, if I'm not mistaken. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, I remember I used a Palm Treo too for many years. Back in 2005, that was when we had Hurricane Katrina here in New Orleans. And so sometimes I'll still go back and look at those pictures. And back in 2005, if I wanted to take a real picture, I would always use an SLR camera. But, you know, for sort of like something like I'm in an emergency like Katrina or something like that, I would just use the Treo. And gosh, those pictures do not hold up. I mean, it's amazing nowadays. You know, even when I have a choice that I could use an SLR camera, gosh, I usually just stick with the iPhone because it's so much better. And the examples that Harry McCracken pointed out, being at Universal Studios, where you have these rich colors, I mean, the back and forth. But the larger point that John Gruber made when he linked to it, which is how I saw this tweet, you know, just, you know, what is this thing that, you know, we overestimate how much progress we can make in a year. And that's true. We think we'll get further, but that, you know, on the long term, we underestimate how much difference a decade can make. And I you know, when you look at what the iPhone has done for the last decade, the iPad, you know, things that didn't even exist before, like the Apple Watch. And I think about this in the context of right now, we seem to be on the verge of Apple maybe doing something with, you know, goggles or some sort of a headset. And, you know, people are anxious for it to come out. I remember when people were anxious for the iPhone to come out in 2006 and then 2007. And then it's going to come out, and, you know, the first version is probably going to have, you know, some cool features, but a lot of, you know, things that are not. But then, you know, 10 years from now, maybe we'll be at the point where there'll be a headset that will be as thin as these glasses that I'm holding in my hand that I have in my face, and we'll just have augmented reality. It makes it interesting, you know, whenever you sort of have the perspective of time. I don't know, fascinating topic, something to think about.
Even Harry McCracken answers one of the comments here. He goes, I only used the Palm Treo because I'd accidentally left my nice Canon point and shoot in my rent car. It was vastly better than the Treo, but not as good as the iPhone 14. And you know, I agree with everything you said. My only thought, at least the way that I guess I get comfortable with this, Jeff, is I say, you know what? I'm glad that I have those pictures from 2005.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And at the time that we were taking them, just the fact that I had a camera that I could have in my hand on a phone was amazing in and of itself. And the only reason that they look bad, you know, today is simply because what we can compare them to with the iPhone 14. But I think it does just kind of bring home the point, like how much that I can appreciate the advances in the technology, I guess. And sometimes we just don't think about it; we take it for granted. But it's just really neat when somebody like Harry McCracken puts this up on there. Well, the other thing that is good for humankind in advancing phone use today is, of course, anytime that we have the new emojis that are coming out, that it's important to make sure that we can report on that. I saw this around several times, and I found that this was pretty well reported. That the new emojis coming out in 16.4. We're on 16.3.2 right now, I think. Maybe wasn't it last week or so, Jeff, that there was like
a security update?
Yeah, which is important. If you're not updated to that yet, we both wholeheartedly say that you should do that. Mm-hmm. But 16.4 is currently out in like beta, not something that I would recommend the average person to install yet. But once it does come out, thankfully you're going to have a shaking face emoji and a moose. Finally, a moose emoji. I didn't know there wasn't one already. That's great.
A peas and a pod, some different colors, hearts. The ones that are on your screen right now are interesting because they have these sort of hands that you can have, like a rightward facing hand and a leftward facing. So you know how if you text somebody in the messages app on the iPhone, if you send like 3 emoji and nothing else, they'll be bigger, that little trick.
Right.
And so I can see people putting like a left hand, a right hand, and then something in the middle. In fact, there's an example you're showing
there it is
right now.
Right there.
So, that'll be something that people will be playing with. They're going to come up with all sorts of interesting things. So anyway, it's the new emoji are fun. And I don't know if we're missing the moose, although I think we have a squirrel. So now we'll have squirrel and moose. So you can recreate your Bullwinkle and Rocky episodes.
Always important to report on this. Yes.
We don't know when 16.4 will come out, but my guess is it's coming out in the next few weeks.
Pretty soon here. Another thing that is fairly similar in the aspect of Siri and some automation things. This was a link you did from the In the News post last week, Jeff. This was great.
A week ago.
And I'm so glad that we're going to talk about it. 18 Siri commands that every iPhone owner should know. This is a great article.
Yeah, this was worth looking at because, most of us use Siri every day, and Siri has its flaws and strengths. We're not going to talk about that right now. But oftentimes, Siri can do something that you just don't even realize it can do. And some of the commands that were in this post that I thought were interesting is you can say to Siri, what can I do here? And when you do that, a list comes up on the screen of just like things that you might want to do. And there's a good chance you'll see some that's like, wow, I never even thought I could do that. And there are specific commands for Siri that work with specific apps. So you can say, what can I do with blank? Blank being, whatever, what can I do with mail or contacts? And it will give you some hints. Though that one doesn't work. It only shows you 1 or 2. It doesn't show you all of them, but it's still interesting. But there's other ones in here that I just don't even think about. Like if you want to turn on the flashlight, you can, there's a million ways to do it from the lock screen and everything else, but you could just say to, activate flashlight or enable airplane mode.
Interesting.
Those are good. And another one that I've known about this a lot, but I don't use it as much as I should. Let's say you have a list in reminders called like groceries. You can just say, hey, add apples to my grocery list. And it will automatically add that without you having to open up the app and go into it and stuff like that. And the final one I'll mention, I had no idea you could do this. Let's say, I remember that you sent me an email sometime in the last week, and I just want to see it real quick. I can just say, hey, find emails from Brett. And what it will do is in the mail app, it will show me anything with Brett in it. Now, that would include somebody that might have Brett as their first name, their last name. It won't necessarily be you. And I guess I could say Brett Broni and make it specifically you. But no, that's something you could always do by tapping in the search field and typing it and stuff like that. But speaking, so show emails from Fred, show emails from someone, or you can even do it with a subject line too, find emails about blank. And so talking is often faster than tapping. And again, if it wasn't for me looking at this list, I wouldn't have even known that these are things I can do with Siri. So my big tip is take a look at this list because there's so many things listed here. Some of them you're going to be like, oh yeah, I use that one all the time.
Right, exactly.
But others you'll be like, oh, never thought about that.
I wonder that mail tip, Jeff, that probably just works in the Mail app, maybe. Some of us use Outlook or, Sanebox or some of the other apps.
I would imagine that that's true. Yeah, but I haven't tested it. But I did test it on my own iPhone this morning and it worked. So, and I just use the regular Mail app on my iPhone.
Like you said, there's some in here. I had no idea. Taking screenshots, you can have it do that. I don't think I knew that you could have, I call her Hey Sally, that you could have her like restart your phone. That's pretty cool.
That's a good one too. Yeah.
And then most importantly, possibly that if you're a Harry Potter fan, you can cast spells with Siri. Is this really taking some of like the spells from Harry Potter? Like
no. So what this is doing here, this is an old trick. So if you use the shortcuts app on your iPhone, you can create a shortcut to do whatever you want. And shortcuts can be simple. You can have a shortcut that's one step. Like I'm going to make a shortcut that does nothing more than turn the flashlight on, for example. And then in the shortcuts app, you can give that shortcut a custom name. So, for example, I think you're showing on your screen. Apparently, the Harry Potter command for a flashlight on a wand is Lux, Lux. So, if you create a shortcut to turn on the flashlight, call it Lux. Then you can just pick up your phone and say, "Hey, blank, Lux." And and it'll do it. So that one's a little bit more gimmicky. Although it may not be gimmicky because it might be that some custom name that you come up with, is just easier for you to say and remember to do some action. So, I mean, it's not necessarily just for pretending like you're Harry Potter, but it'll work for both uses.
This next story I'm going to file under It's About Time. You and I have talked about these live activities that would show up if you have an iPhone 14 Pro, which I just quickly tell you, I don't think we've talked since a couple of weeks ago before I had my hospital stand. I did do some a couple of flights, Jeff, and we've talked about the Flighty app. Well, I went all in. I went in with the subscription. I got to tell you, that was so valuable to have that information. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I know when you were flying as well, but just being able to update like what my next flight's going to be, like where that plane is, when it even arrives at the, I am telling you, I am all in. And it was just so great having it come up, not just in notifications, but to update it live. Even while I was in the air, it would update, that live activities. So the story that you linked to is that the Uber app finally gets a major update with simplified home screen and live activities for all iPhone users, which is great. About time. Thank you.
Yeah. And I can't remember if this is the first time that they've had live activities in Uber or if they had more limited version, but they definitely updated the app. And it looks a lot more streamlined, and live activities is available in all sorts of models. Uber is a perfect example, much like the plane. The plane's a perfect example too. But Uber, I mean, you're standing there, you're on the side of the street, your phone might be in your hand. You just want to glance down at your lock screen and see the car is 3 minutes away. The car is 1 minute away. So perfect example of a fantastic use for live activities. Well, and makes sense.
It's even better than that though, Jeff. That's the thing. Like before it would send those updates and it would say, hey, your ride is 3 minutes away. Hey, your ride is 2 minutes away. Hey, your ride is arriving in 1 minute. Like, okay, I don't need 3 notifications when I would like to see, if you can see this on the screen that I'm showing right now, it literally shows the car moving, getting closer to my location. Like, I just want that to be updated all the time as opposed to separate individual notifications. And that's what I'm just saying. Like, I've been waiting for this. Like you said, Jeff, Uber has been a perfect place where something like this can be so useful, the live activities. And man, I just say keep bringing it on. Thank you, Uber, for finally releasing that. I guess it would work the same for your Uber Eats deliveries as well. I haven't used it, but I don't think if you're really hungry, you want that Chipotle to come pretty quick.
I actually think I saw something where Uber announced that it's coming to Uber Eats later this year, but it's not available now. And I'll also mention that, I mean, this is the rumor mill, but I saw some you don't have to be, that brilliant of a rumor monger to know that there's a chance that Apple might bring the island, the dynamic island, to other models in the future. And so I do think that if that happens, if this fall Apple releases even more iPhones that support dynamic island, plus last year's model will have it, as more people have iPhones in their hand that support dynamic island, presumably we'll see more and more apps support the feature, which I look forward to.
Well, I file that quickly under something I could never do without now. That dynamic island has just been so helpful to me to like have I feel like I almost have something additional information available on my screen. Like if I'm playing something from Spotify or Apple Music, or if I've got, a radio station playing, like I'm still working on my phone and other apps. I don't want to switch all the way back to that app, but I can just simply tap up there at the very top of that dynamic island, and I'm just thrilled with it. Plus you can have a third aspect or a second thing on there as well. So I don't see that Apple's going to do away with that, and it's only going to be included in more and more. Speaking of notifications, another story you linked to, which I know we've talked about medications before, but if you want to combine medications with iPhone notifications, I'm sure there have been apps that have been out there. I haven't had to use any of them, but this is neat that now it looks like Apple is including some of these medication notifications even in the health app, which I think you can already track your medications in the health app right now, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff. And then this is just kind of a new update that I think you can even like scan your medicine bottle, right? And you can talk about like the shape of the pill. Really good stuff here.
Yeah, the article that you're showing right now from Griffin Jones at Cult of Mac, this is not a new feature. It's relatively new. It came out in iOS 16, I believe, but it's just a nice rundown of the app, and it works really well. I've used it. It's in the health app, and when you put in your medications, like you say, you can scan them. You can actually say, this medication is a pink triangle, and this one is like a yellow circle. And so that way it just sort of helps you, because in your own mind you may think of your pills not by their names but by what they look like, which makes good sense. And you can also, like you say, have it to do reminders, and I use it because I have something that I take every other day, and I always forget, is it the odd day or the even day, and then it's a new month and now it's even December, it's that sort of, and so it's nice that I can just sort of check and see what I'm doing. I think it works really well. It's nicely integrated. It even goes as far as to give you warnings if it sees that two of your medications might be interfering with each other. Now, hopefully that would never happen. Your healthcare provider would, prevent that from happening, or maybe even your pharmacist. But you can also get specific information about, medications that's in a little bit more plain language than some of the stuff you might find online. It's a really well done app for anyone that takes daily or weekly or on any scheduled medications. I really encourage you to use the app because it's really nicely done.
The health app, which comes on your iPhone already. Like
it's free. It's separate, part of the health app. Yeah, it's just a subsection of the health app for medications.
This is just really neat. And it makes me think, you kind of just quickly alluded to it. It's the interface in the health app that I would prefer over, I would tell you, just in my medical experience over the past week, it was so cool to be able to track everything happening to me or what was scheduled for medications when I was discharged. Like, I had real-time access to everything happening through my hospital's app on my iPhone, which was just incredible. I mean, thankfully, I haven't had to, experience this too much, but I just, for folks that are, having to have medical procedures, it's just great to have all that information. And then I know that I have that medical information tied in with my health app on my iPhone, so I can access it there as well. And just being able to have this additional information here is really neat. I think the other reason, quickly, I liked this story and you linking to it, Jeff, is I'm going to keep saying this. I think much like Apple was becoming a quote music company in the beginning of the years with iTunes and things, I think Apple is making a run here for being a health company, as well as a financial company and several other things. But like the health company, along with the Apple Watch stories that we've talked about several times, and just the fact that they continue to update even their health app with all of this information, the medical information that it can, emergency responders can even access on the phone, just all these kind of things. I'm thrilled to see that Apple is continuing to update a lot of this information.
Along those same lines, I agree with you 100%. There was a story in the news this week. I didn't link to it because it was somewhat rumor, somewhat just sort of whatever. But it was talking that it appears that Apple is making some minor breakthroughs in glucose monitoring, which is something that a whole lot of people do.
Yeah.
And in theory, and we're years away from this if it ever works. But wouldn't it be wonderful if something like an Apple Watch either on its own or maybe supplemented by some other device that something small and unobtrusive that you put elsewhere on your body, that it could talk to, could keep track of that stuff, because that's, critically life and death, for some people. And
absolutely.
many people say that glucose monitoring would be one of the holy grails of monitoring. But I agree. I mean, whenever Apple CEO Tim Cook talks about health on the iPhone, on the Apple Watch, it is clear that this is a huge focus for the company. Right. And I think it should be. I mean, it's great that they have it. And they always, cross these lines of, they don't want to go too far about saying, without getting FDA approval and everything else. But I'm glad that they're taking these steps, because every week you hear stories about, the Apple Watch saved my life because it told me that my heartbeat was irregular or whatever it was.
Right. Well, if you have your health app information up on your phone and you want to broadcast it to your family or so through your television set, but you don't have an Apple TV, I thought this was kind of an interesting article you linked to, Jeff. How to mirror an iPhone to a TV without Apple TV. I mean, the easiest thing is to get an Apple TV. Way easier than anything else. But I thought Nick deCourville here on the Mac Observer did a good job of walking you down some other options.
Some of them were options I knew about, like just using a cord to connect, like an HDMI cord that connects to your phone. That one I knew about. But there was others I didn't. He points out that there's a lot of third-party apps that if your television can access a website, you can get an app on your phone that will allow your phone to share your screen to the website, and that's showed on the TV. But one things that Nick warns about, which is a good point, is he said some of these services are a little shady. And so he represented one specific app called AirDroid Cast. The droid in the name makes me wonder if it was maybe originally for Android phones and now just works on iPhone too. But so I would accept his recommendation if you're looking to do this. And again, the best way to do it, if you have a television that works with AirPlay, even if you don't have an Apple TV attached to it, you can sometimes directly go to the TV. But we've all been in situations whether you're in a hotel room or you're giving a presentation and they don't have the setup you need. If you are ever in a situation where you connect your iPhone or your iPad to a TV to show things to someone else, check out this article, because he goes through like 7 different ways to do it. And it's useful to have these in the back of your head, just in case your top 2 or 3 options don't work. And you got to go to, let's go to number 6 on the list. How can we get it done that way?
I appreciate the fact that he did say it's not like these are free options. In fact, I think he said in here that, sometimes it could be costing just as much as just go and get an Apple TV. It's going to be simpler. But I do like the fact you mentioned this, that he goes to, hey, you could always do a wired connection, which a lot of us don't think about. And obviously it's a little bit more limiting because you got to have a wire that's connected to the actual TV. But I've been doing this, and I know you have too. When we give presentations from our iPhone or from the iPad, you have these adapters that plug into the bottom of your iPad, and then the other end of the adapter plugs into either the HDMI cable or the VGA cable in some places where we go. And it works great. It comes right up, and you're connected without having to worry about Wi-Fi or wireless connections and what's turned on or not. I still carry these around with me. Although I always recommend the ones from Apple because I think I trust them as much, but I think they still cost like $40 or $50 each, depending on the whether you need a Lightning version or a USB-C version. But if you do any kind of presentations, you probably already have these adapters because it's just good to keep them in your bag, as your travel bag, as it were.
Agreed.
When you are traveling, you want to charge up your Apple Watch or your phone. This was great. Thank you for letting me know about a product, Jeff, that I probably would have no use for. But my daughter liked that Wednesday show, right? Which was the spin-off of the Addams Family. Yes. Okay. So maybe for her, like I'm not going to tell her, maybe I'll get it for a birthday. Shake hands with the world's creepiest Apple Watch charging stand. Thank you, Jeff, for linking to this today.
Yeah, this is something you need to look at rather than hear us describe. But if you think that a severed hand, like the is the name of the hand It in the Addams Family, or is that's cousin It? I'm confusing.
Was it Thing? The Thing.
Thank you. Thing.
It was it? Oh, Thing.
Yeah, it's the one that has all the hair. Thing.
I remember the black and white version. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of too. But in the Wednesday show, in the original one, Thing is the severed hand that walks around, and you can have an Apple Watch charger that looks like Thing. The funny thing, actually, this is not something. I don't think this is something you can buy. I think it is a program, something you download and you print out with your 3D printer. So it looks sort of funny.
That's awesome. All right. Well, if severed hands are maybe not your cup of tea, perhaps this was another one that I thought I would it would really be cool to have this, but I'm not quite sure yet. It comes from Ed Hardy, which we are big fans of Ed Hardy. But this is a teeny tiny little Macintosh from the 80s, which just happens to be a 3-port USB-C charger as well.
Yeah, and it's what 67 what's the word 67 watts, which is enough for
exactly.
That's real charging.
That's good.
You can, that's
good.
not bad. So I mean, it's not like this. I mean, this thing would actually do the job for people, and it looks cute. So why not?
Very good. Yeah. And Ed Hardy does a great job. This is my favorite picture.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's hilarious.
This is his old Macintosh SE, and he's got his old literal Macintosh SE monitor and the brain and everything next to the teeny tiny. This one officially is called the Char Geek Retro 67. But did you see even the screen on this thing lights up? It says 67 on. Okay, very, very, very cool.
Cute.
And then lastly, I feel like this is more along the public service announcement, aspect. If you still have your iPhone original, iPhone 1, wasn't even the first, right? It was like the iPhone 0. Like it didn't even have a number.
Just called the iPhone. That was all.
The original iPhone. I saw this story around. An original iPhone from 2007, never opened from its box, sold at auction for $63,000. Yeah, incredible. It makes me sad that I opened mine.
That's a pretty good rate of return from 2007 to 2023 to go from, what was it, like $500 to $63,000. The particular story, if I remember correctly, I think the woman was a hairdresser, and she actually had an iPhone, and someone gave her a second one. So she had a second one and never opened it. It was still shrink wrapped, in the original, what is it, the cellophane or whatever it is that they shrink wrap things in. So so it was literally the original iPhone, but $63,000, that is a lot. I have my original iPhone 3G, but it's not in the box anymore. So it's probably not worth quite as much.
That's the thing. It's like everybody gets excited, like, oh, I still have my original iPhone. Yeah, but does it turn on?
Yeah,
like,
it might be worth 63
This is like a pristine,
cents as opposed to.
This is the Apple Store won't even take it as a trade-in anymore. But if you are somehow hanging on to that original iPhone, here's your warning that AT&T might be shutting down that original 2G network on here. I guess I'm glad that AT&T is staying on top of this, right? We have way moved on from 2G networks, but that shut
down in 2017. But
right.
Gosh, and do you remember? I mean, those original iPhones, and then the iPhone 3G afterwards had that Edge too. The Edge network on an iPhone was so slow. That's the reason that those original iPhones, when you would scroll in Safari, it couldn't keep up with you as you were scrolling.
Keep up with you. Right,
and so you would have that sort of a checkerboard display that would move so that it could then try to catch up with you. I remember just things like loading at the time, the idea that the front page of the New York Times would even load on a mobile device.
I know, that's the thing. I loved it.
So it didn't matter that it took 30 seconds because it was so cool that it could work in the first place.
I had it in my hand.
We have come a very long way from the Edge network and the original iPhone.
Very long way. In the know. Here's my tip for the day, Mr. Jeff. I'm part of a group that they send out a bunch of emails, right? It's like an email newsletter group of some kind. And it doesn't happen all the time, but what happens is they are not using software that can say, hey, if an out of office reply comes to this email, the original email that's sent out, then we would reject it, right? So what ends up happening is that somebody else sends this email on my behalf, and I end up getting about 350 out of office replies to that original email. Well, it happens to be in my Gmail. And so what happens is that every single one of those out of office replies pops up as a notification in my Gmail. I have those notifications turned on for a reason, because I don't get a whole lot of email there. And it's something, if I do get an email there, I want to know, right? But it just so happens when they do send out this newsletter, it's like bing, 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 bing. And I'm like, okay, that is way too much. I don't want to turn off all the notifications for my Gmail, but I would like to just temporarily mute those notifications. And thank you, Apple, for allowing me to do this. The way that I typically will do it is if I get a notification, I will simply dismiss a notification by swiping my thumb to the left, right? I just swipe it to the left, and that whatever that notification may be, whether it's from Gmail or anything, and it'll simply just get dismissed. However, if you slowly swipe to the left, you'll see that you've got two little buttons. One is to delete or dismiss, but there's another button there that's called options. And if you tap on that options button, then you will get usually two options here. You can say mute for 1 hour or mute for the whole day, for mute for today is what it's called. Now, I wish that this would almost be where I could tap and hold on the message, Jeff. But if I tap and hold on the message, let me see if this page shows it. It's a different set of options there. I can go to the settings and turn it off if I wanted to that way, but it doesn't give me the temporary mute notifications, if that makes sense. So the way that I do this, when I start seeing these emails come in, the first notification, I just go swipe slowly to the left. I tap the options button that appears on the right there, and then I can just say mute for 1 hour, or I can say mute for the whole day. I don't want to go and turn off the notifications. I don't want to change any of the notifications there. I can always do that if I need to by going into the settings app. But in this case, I started using this and just wanted to make sure that people knew that you can mute notifications from a specific app temporarily, or from a specific person or something along those lines, and that is available by just swiping slowly to the left, tapping the options button, and that's where you'll find it.
Good tip. That's a good tip. So my tip for today, in the no segment, has to do with something that came out in iOS 16. So one of the nice features that I liked last year is that you can now display custom, you can have images show up on your home screen. This is especially nice if you have an iPhone with the always on screen like I do. So whenever I look down at my iPhone, my lock screen is no longer just a static image that doesn't change for 6 months, but instead it changes. And when you set it up, you can actually say that I want it to either show people, pets, nature, or cities, or some combination of those. I have mine on people. And when you choose people, you can even say, which people do you want to show? And so I've gone through my list and I say, show my wife and show my daughter and show my son. And so every time I look at my phone, it will have a picture of one of them. And it's not a random picture. I mean, it's random in the sense that the phone picks them. But what the phone does is it uses the Apple on-device AI to pick what it thinks are interesting pictures or good pictures, in focus, maybe an interesting expression, a smile. So it's going to be some good pictures. The way behind the scenes, it actually picks 16 pictures and then it sort of cycles between them. And so although you can have it that every single time you look at your phone, there's a new picture, I don't like that because, after 16 pictures, you see repeats. But I have mine set that it changes every hour. And for all intents and purposes, that's good for me. So I look at it and then an hour later, I look at my phone again and it's a new picture. Okay, that's just the setup for all of this. What I did not like about this feature originally was that sometimes I would see an interesting picture and I would say, oh gosh, I haven't thought about that trip to such and such. I want to see more from that. There wasn't a way to go from the home screen into photos, especially if I couldn't remember when it was. And another thing I didn't like about it was every once in a while, the AI would do, it's not that the AI is doing a bad job, but maybe it would show something. I don't want that picture on the front of my iPhone for whatever reason. And I wanted a way to say, keep doing what you're doing, but just take this one out of the mix. So here's the solution for both of these. And it has a number of different steps. I wish I could say it's a one-step solution. It's not. First, you hold down your finger on your lock screen. And then you'll see after you do that for like a second or two, the screen sort of moves up and you'll see a button at the bottom that says customize. Tap on that customize button. Okay. Next, when you're looking, after you tap customize, there's going to be a lock screen on your left and there's going to be your home screen on the right. Tap on your lock screen because that's where my pictures are showing up. Next, on the image that's on the screen, that's sort of in the background, if I just tap in the screen, you can make it cycle between those 16 pictures that it has selected for today. And tomorrow it'll be a different set of 16 pictures. And so once I find the specific picture that I was interested in, I then tap at the bottom right, there's a circle with 3 dots in it. And when you tap on that circle, you see a bunch of different options. And one of the options is to show photo in library. that will jump you into the Photos app. And now I can see, oh, this was the day, when was this? Oh, this was June of 2012. Right. I remember my kids were doing cute things that day, and I could look at the other pictures. And so you can get from the, how fun that you showed me this picture, show me more. That's the way you can do that. That's one thing you can do. A second thing you can do from the exact same pop-up window is if something shows up that's like, you know what? This picture is not appropriate for my phone. I don't want other people looking at my phone and seeing that, whatever it is, you just don't want people seeing it, or it's a bad memory, whatever happens to be. You can say, don't feature photo, and it will take it out of it, which decreases your picture. So instead of having 16 to cycle through, it'll be 15 pictures for today. But then in the future, when it's picking, a new set of pictures for tomorrow, it presumably won't pick that picture anymore because you've said this is not something that I want to have on my phone. So it takes a number of steps to get there, but it solves something that I had been wanting. I mean, I'm literally the first day that this feature came out last fall, I was like, I love it, but how can I do X? I remember. And now with 16.3, you can finally do X for those two things.
I am so glad you're talking through this, because I remember when this feature came out, I think Apple calls it photo shuffle, right? That's a photo shuffle, or the photo shuffle lock screen option. Right. To be more specific. And I remember I showed this to my wife. She loved it. She immediately set it up, and she just loves it because exactly what you're talking about, Jeff, is that every time she picks her phone up, she's got a different picture. And usually it's like of the kids when they were young, and she's like, oh, look at this. You remember this? But I am so excited now to tell her that if you like that picture, you want to, see more, exactly what you were talking about, Jeff, that she could jump in. Like you said, it's a couple of extra steps here to get to the solution, but it's worth it, right? And I haven't turned this on. I've played around with all kinds of different lock screens when they came out, but for some reason I just haven't set up the photo shuffle. But I'm doing this. I'm doing that this afternoon. This is really cool. It's just a good. It's a fun option that they included in the fact that you could customize these lock screens so much more. But this photo shuffle is probably the one that takes the cake. Yeah, I'm gonna set that up. Thanks for sharing that. All right, and thanks for being here today. And I think we're back on schedule, which means that we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. And in fact, we should let people know that next week, Brett, you're going to be presenting at ABA Tech Show in Chicago. Right. So anyone listening to this podcast who's an attorney, who's going to Tech Show, definitely check out Brett's sessions.
I'll see you there.
I cannot go to Tech Show this year. Yeah. And so what I will be looking forward to a week from today is maybe you could, share just a little bit to some of us of some of the, hot new legal tech that you're hearing about. Anything interesting you come across, maybe you can tell us about it next week. So I'd be happy to do that, Jeff. Reason for folks to tune in next week. Okay. It was great talking to you, Brett. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.